Welcome to Easy English Talk Podcast, where we make English easy for you.
Hello, and welcome to Speak Up. If this is your first time here, we're so glad you joined us. And if you're returning, thank you for coming back. Before we begin, a quick note. Subscribing really helps us reach more people who want to grow through conversations like these. Now, today's topic is simple but powerful. How to speak naturally using everyday expressions. And trust me, these small phrases can completely change how real and alive your conversations feel.
Yes, exactly. These expressions may sound ordinary, but they carry connection, warmth, and even emotion. When you use them, people don't just hear your words, they feel them. That's why this episode matters. It's not about learning harder or speaking more. It's about finding the little ways to make your voice sound truly human. And that's what we'll share with you today.
Think about it. How many times have you known what to say, but it didn't quite land the way you wanted? That's where these native expressions step in. They fill the silence, soften the mood, and make you sound natural without even trying. And that's the heart of today's journey. Learning how just a few small words can transform the way you connect.
So, stay with us. In just a short while, you'll discover expressions you can start using right away in any conversation. They're simple, real, and they'll help your words feel more alive. This is one of those topics that seems small but makes a big difference. And by the end, you'll see exactly why.
You know, I've been thinking about those moments when we're in the middle of a conversation and suddenly there's this pause. The silence just stretches, and it feels heavier than it really is. I always wonder why that happens. I mean, silence isn't bad on its own, right? But in the middle of speaking, it can almost feel like the air between two people becomes thick, like we're both waiting for the next word to break it. And sometimes I catch myself overthinking in those seconds. Like, oh no, did I say the wrong thing? Did I lose the flow? It's such a small moment, but it can feel so big.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. And I think the reason those gaps feel heavy is because we're not just speaking words, we're reaching out for connection. When the flow suddenly stops, it's like that connection feels interrupted, even for a moment. And we all want to be understood, don't we? So when the silence falls, our minds rush in to fill it with doubt. But maybe instead of fighting it, we could see those little pauses as something natural, even necessary. Because sometimes silence holds just as much meaning as words.
That's so true. And yet, at the moment, I rarely think of it that way. I remember being in a conversation where I paused to find the right words, and I could almost feel the other person leaning forward, waiting. It was like the silence made us both aware of each other in a deeper way. It reminded me that conversation isn't just about filling space, it's about presence, about noticing what's happening between us. And honestly, that's a little scary, but it's also beautiful, because those quiet gaps, as uncomfortable as they can feel, are often where the real connection lives.
Yes, and I think we don't give ourselves enough credit in those moments. We worry so much about keeping the flow going, but sometimes the most human thing is to pause, breathe, and let the other person feel that space too. It's like music. The rests are what make the notes meaningful. In the same way, those small silences can actually give weight to what we say next. They give the listener a chance to catch the feeling, not just the words.
That's such a beautiful way to look at it, like music. And maybe that's the trick, to stop seeing silence as failure and instead see it as part of the rhythm of speaking. Because when I think about my most memorable conversations, there was always a moment of quiet in there somewhere. A breath, a pause, a soft glance. It's in those little gaps where honesty often sneaks in, where we show we're thinking, we're feeling, we're human. And that's not something to be ashamed of, right? It's something to embrace.
Exactly. The quiet gap isn't empty at all. It's full of possibility. It can carry care, reflection, even courage. And maybe the next time it happens, instead of rushing to fill it, we can lean into it and trust that connection doesn't disappear in silence. In fact, it might even grow stronger there. Because in the end, words aren't the only way we speak. Sometimes silence is its own kind of language.
You know what's interesting? Sometimes it's not the big, polished sentences that really matter. It's the little phrases, the ones that slip out almost without thinking. Like when someone says, "I hear you," or "that makes sense." They aren't long or complicated, but they have this strange power. They soften the air between people. It's almost like they say more than the words themselves. They carry reassurance, or they carry presence. And I think without them, conversations can feel a bit stiff, almost too formal, like there's something missing in the middle.
Yes, exactly. I've always thought of these small phrases as bridges, you know? They're not the destination. They don't carry the big meaning of the conversation, but they help us get there smoothly. Imagine two people trying to cross a stream. Those phrases are the stepping stones that stop us from slipping or falling into silence. And I think what's beautiful is how natural they feel. We don't always plan them, but when they show up, they change everything. It's like they say, "I'm here with you at this moment."
That's such a great way to put it. Stepping stones. I can think of times when I was unsure of what to say next, but a small phrase like, "Yeah, I get that," kept the moment alive until my thoughts caught up. It feels like these phrases aren't just about words, they're about holding space, keeping the thread between us from snapping. And it's funny because they don't look important on the page, but when you hear them, you feel lighter. You feel less alone in the conversation. And I think that's what makes them so powerful.
Right, because conversation isn't just about information, it's about presence, about feeling heard. And those little phrases are like tiny sparks that keep the fire going. They can make someone feel safe to keep talking, even when they're unsure of their words. I mean, imagine sharing something important and the other person just stays silent. It would feel strange, wouldn't it? But if they say, "I know what you mean," even quietly, it suddenly feels warmer. It tells you you're not talking into the void. Someone is really with you.
And maybe that's the secret. It's not about saying something profound every time. It's about letting these small expressions carry the moment when we don't need to add more weight. Sometimes a phrase as simple as, "I see," or "that's true," can be enough to remind both people that the flow is still alive. And in those moments, it's less about cleverness and more about kindness. You're showing that you're there, and that's more valuable than any perfect sentence.
Yes, exactly. And I think if we step back and imagine ourselves in those moments, we can feel it. Picture sitting across from someone, sharing a story, and hearing them say softly, "I get you." It's such a small phrase, but it carries you. It lifts you across the silence, across the awkwardness, and straight into connection. And maybe that's the beauty of it. Conversations don't need to be heavy to be meaningful. Sometimes it's these little turns of speech that make us feel most human, most alive.
You know, it amazes me how some words, or even small expressions, seem to carry this invisible weight with them. Like when someone says, "I'm glad you're here," it's not just a phrase. It holds joy, comfort, maybe even relief. Or when you hear, "Take care," it suddenly feels like a blanket being wrapped around you, even though it's only 2 words. And then there are phrases that carry sadness, too. Like, "I'll miss you." It's so simple, but it lands deep. It makes me realize that words don't just speak to the ear. They speak straight to the heart.
Yes, exactly. It's not just what's said, but how it lands in the heart. Sometimes the simplest expressions touch us the most because they hold emotion that can't really be explained. I think of how someone can whisper, "It's okay," and suddenly your whole body feels lighter, even if nothing has changed. Or when you hear a quiet, "I'm proud of you," and it lingers far longer than you expected. Those moments remind me that language isn't just sound, it's a vessel for feelings we can't always carry on our own.
And it's amazing how those feelings can shift depending on the tone, right? A phrase like really can sound curious, sarcastic, or even amazed, all depending on the voice behind it. It shows me that language isn't fixed. It's alive, flexible, breathing with us. And that's where the magic is. Words can be heavy with sorrow in one moment, and then in another, they can lift you with joy. It's almost like they hold space for both, carrying both heaviness and lightness at the same time.
Yes, I love that, because sometimes the same phrase spoken differently can change everything. If someone says, "I'm here," with a calm tone, it feels safe. If they say it with excitement, it feels joyful. And that's why conversations are never just about the words themselves. They're about the breath, the pauses, the way those words are given. It's almost like the emotion hides inside the sound, waiting to be felt by the listener.
Exactly. And when you really think about it, those moments are what we remember. Not the perfect sentences or the clever lines, but the phrases that carried something more, that made us feel something we can't put into grammar or structure. Words like, "you're not alone," or even a soft, "I see you," can carry years of meaning in just a few seconds. It's humbling, really, that language can hold so much more than it shows on the surface.
Yes, and maybe that's why silence matters too. Because the pause after a phrase lets us feel its weight. If someone says, "I believe in you," and then leaves space, that silence becomes part of the message. Language holds both sound and silence, both joy and sadness, both lightness and depth. And maybe the most powerful thing we can do is not just listen to the words, but listen to the feeling they carry within them.
You know, I think one of the most beautiful things about these small phrases is how they naturally find a home in our daily lives. Like when you greet a friend with, "It's good to see you." It's not rehearsed, it just comes out of a place of warmth. And that's the key. It doesn't need to feel forced. These expressions grow into our rhythm, just like breathing. If we let them become part of our conversations, they don't just fill silence, they create connection. And honestly, isn't that what we're all searching for in the end? Those small connections that remind us we belong.
Yes, exactly, Ryan. I think of it like weaving a thread into fabric. Every time you say something simple, like "take care" or "how are you really," you're adding another stitch to the cloth of connection. And the beauty is that you don't have to be perfect. Sometimes you stumble, sometimes the words don't land just right, but that's okay. That imperfection is part of the flow of life. People don't remember the stumble, they remember the care behind the words. And that's what makes the practice feel so human.
I love that. The idea of weaving. Because if you think about it, practice doesn't always look like sitting down with a notebook or memorizing phrases. It's in those tiny moments, greeting your neighbor, pausing before answering, even saying a kind word to yourself. That's where fluency really grows. It's not about being flawless, it's about being present enough to notice those opportunities and let the words come out, even if they're a little messy. And over time, those small moments build a natural rhythm that feels like your own voice.
Right, and that rhythm becomes part of your daily life. Imagine standing in line for coffee and just saying to the person serving you, "Thanks, I appreciate it." That's practice. Or pausing with a friend and saying, "That must be hard. I hear you." These little things don't take extra time, but they shift the atmosphere of the moment. And when you practice them again and again, they start to feel natural, almost like a habit of the heart, as you said earlier. That's where the real transformation happens.
I love that. The idea of weaving. Because if you think about it, practice doesn't always look like sitting down with a notebook or memorizing phrases. It's in those tiny moments, greeting your neighbor, pausing before answering, even saying a kind word to yourself. That's where fluency really grows. It's not about being flawless, it's about being present enough to notice those opportunities and let the words come out, even if they're a little messy. And over time, those small moments build a natural rhythm that feels like your own voice.
Right, and that rhythm becomes part of your daily life. Imagine standing in line for coffee and just saying to the person serving you, "Thanks, I appreciate it." That's practice. Or pausing with a friend and saying, "That must be hard. I hear you." These little things don't take extra time, but they shift the atmosphere of the moment. And when you practice them again and again, they start to feel natural, almost like a habit of the heart, as you said earlier. That's where the real transformation happens.
And you know what's powerful? Once it becomes a habit of the heart, you stop worrying about saying the right thing and start focusing on being with the person in front of you. Honestly, I'd rather have someone stumble and sound human than be flawless and sound distant, because at the end of the day, words are only alive when they carry warmth.
Yes, and that's the reminder I want everyone listening to take away. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect sentence. Just practice in the flow of life, in the grocery store, in the office, with a friend, even with yourself in the mirror. Every time you try, you're not just practicing English, you're practicing connection, kindness, and presence. And that's what makes your words unforgettable. Not because they're perfect, but because they're real.
You know, Priya, sometimes I think the most powerful way to learn how to connect is just by listening to how a real conversation flows. Not a polished speech, not a perfect sentence, but those little back and forth exchanges that feel alive. The pauses, the laughter, even the silences, they all belong. And when we allow those spaces, suddenly the conversation feels like it's breathing. So maybe we should just let ourselves step into one now. Not overthinking, just letting it be what it is.
Yes, let's do that. Imagine this as a small window into a moment, the kind of moment you don't have to prepare for. You're sitting across from someone, maybe with a cup of tea between you, and you say something as simple as, "How was your day?" And they answer with honesty, not because they rehearsed it, but because they felt safe enough to share. That's the rhythm we're talking about. It's not performance, it's presence.
Exactly. And when you hear someone respond, it doesn't always need to be grand. You might just say, "I get that," or "That sounds tough." It's these little echoes that let the other person know you're right there with them. And sometimes that's all people need, to feel heard. So even in our role play now, we don't need to force clever words, just the ordinary ones, carried with a little bit of care, and suddenly the whole conversation feels alive.
And alive conversations are rarely smooth, right? Sometimes you trip over words, sometimes you pause too long, sometimes you just let silence stretch. But that's what makes it real. It's in those imperfect moments that connection deepens, because it shows we're not just trading words, we're sharing ourselves. And that's what makes even the simplest dialogue meaningful. Listeners can almost step inside it and feel like they're part of it too.
You know, as we're saying this, I can almost picture the listener sitting here with us. It's like they're leaning into the pauses, hearing not just our voices, but the spaces between them. That's where the intimacy of conversation lives, in the pauses, the quiet, the laughter that sneaks out. And if they could imagine themselves here, hearing these words not as outsiders, but as participants, then the whole idea of language shifts. It's no longer about correctness, it's about belonging.
Yes, belonging. That's what I want everyone listening to carry with them. Imagine yourself here, inside this circle of words. Hear them settling into you as if you're not just listening, but speaking to them too. That's the real gift of conversation. It doesn't stay outside of us. It enters and becomes part of who we are. And when you walk away with that feeling, you're not just remembering what was said, you're remembering how it felt to be inside it.
Before we go, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been with us through this conversation. Time is precious, and the fact that you chose to spend yours here with us really matters. I hope these moments gave you something to carry into your own conversations, something small but meaningful. And remember, it's not about saying everything perfectly, it's about being present in the words you share.
Yes, thank you so much for sitting with us today. Our hope is always that your time here feels valuable, that what you take away lingers with you long after the episode ends. So try these little reflections out in your day, notice how they feel, and let them grow naturally. And of course, if you'd like to stay with us for more moments like this, subscribe and keep joining us. Until next time, take care of your words and let them take care of you.